Okay, so Noach part 2. So right away in the first verse in Parsha Noach, uh, Bereshit chapter 6, verse 9, it says, Ele todot Noach Noach. These are the generations of Noach. So there's a question. The first question is, why does it say generations? Noach lived one generation. What do you mean these are the generations of Noach? Second question is, why does it say Noach twice? Noach, Noach. He was a righteous man, perfect in his generations. In his generations. And we understand that it says Noach walked with God. Noach walked with God. And it calls Noach a Zadik. He's called a Zadik. It says, Ele todot Noach Noach ish Zadik. Tamim. He was a righteous man, perfect. Now, who else is called a Zadik in Torah? Is it written anywhere else in Torah that someone else is a Zadik? Written anywhere? Nobody. Nobody else. The Torah does not write and call anybody else a Zadik. Not Abraham, not Yitzhak, not Yaakov. But the sages say that Noach wasn't even that great. If he lived in Abraham's time, he would have been just a normal man compared to Abraham and his generation. The Torah calls Noach a Zadik. And in Bereshit 6:5, just before this parsha, Hashem says, I'm going to wipe out the earth. I'm going to wipe out the earth. But Noach found grace. Noach found chen, it says, with Hashem. In Genesis chapter 6, verse 8, look what it says. It says, V'Noach matzah chen. Noach found grace in the eyes of Hashem. Matzah chen. We actually find somebody else who was found with grace, matzah chen, in the Torah as well. And actually, if we go to Exodus, Shemot, chapter 33, verse 17. Chapter 33, verse 17. Let me go there. Verse 17. It says this. Hashem said to Moshe, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, Gam es hadavar hazeh, asher dibarta ese, ki matzasa chen. This matter too, of which I spoke, of which you spoke, I will do. For you have found favor, matzah chen, in my eyes, and I have known you by name. So here we have Noach that found matzah chen, found favor in Hashem's eyes. We also see that Moshe found favor in Hashem's eyes. And actually, how do we know Moshe had chen? Well, also, if we go back to Genesis 6, verse 3, it says this. Vayomer Hashem lo yadon ruhi shana. Oh, sorry. And then hanafalim. Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Vayomer Hashem lo yadon ruhi be'adam Le'olam beshagam. Hashem said, my spirit shall not contend evermore concerning man, since he is but flesh, beshagam, hu basar, v'hayu yamav me'ah ve'esrim shana. So, and Hashem said, my spirit shall not contend evermore concerning man, since he is but flesh, beshagam. Okay, and what's the remez to beshagam? Beshagam, Rashi says the word beshagam, but he is flesh, is equal to 345. Shin 300, mem is 40, gimel is 3 plus bet, beshagam, to 345, which is the same numerical value as Moshe. And it says in this verse, his days shall be 120 years. We see others have lived longer than this. And so what is the Torah really hinting to? The sages say this is hinting to Moshe. Beshagam is the original name of Moshe, who actually lived 120 years. And Moshe is not actually the name his mother gave him. The sages say Beshagam was one of his names. And this is the remez to Moshe and Bereshis. And so Moshe, what's similar about Moshe and Noach? Moshe was also in the water, in a teva. The Torah says he was in a teva, which is the same word for ark that Noah was in. If we go to Exodus chapter 2, verse 3, even verse 2, it says his mother saw that he was good and she hid him for 3 months. She was no longer able to hide him. And it says she took him for him a reed basket, okay, and smeared it with clay and tar. She placed the boy into it and placed it among the reeds at the bank of the river. Okay, now Rashi comments on this, and he says there was tar on the outside and plaster on the inside. So Rashi says Noach put tar on the outside and the inside. So there's only 2 boxes in history, and Rashi's making a big deal about this. He says, okay, Noah's Ark had tar on the outside and tar on the inside, but Moshe's only had tar on the outside. Why is Rashi so bothered by this? He's bothered by Moshe's box. In the Torah, I mentioned there's only one place where a person is called a Zadik, Noach. However, if you go to the book of Amos, Amos chapter 2, verse 6, it says this, so said Hashem, for 3 transgressions of Israel, but for 4 I will not acquit them. For they're selling a righteous man, but Kesav Zadik, it says Zadik, a righteous man for silver and a poor man for shoes. It says they sold a Zadik, for a pair of shoes. So who is this referring to? Who is Amos referring to? It's referring, the sages refer this to Yosef. The sages call Yosef Hatzadik, but nowhere in Torah does it call Yosef a Zadik. But here it's alluded to in the prophets, in the book of Amos. Okay. Also, when Rashi comments about Moshe being in the Teva, he says, so that the Zadik, Moshe, would not smell the foul odor of tar. So Rashi says Moshe is a Zedek. Now we don't commentaries don't even talk about Avraham the Zedek, or Yitzhak the Zedek. We don't refer to this, and Rashi specifically calls Moshe the Zedek as well. All right. And what makes a person a Zedek? Some people, I've heard this come up a lot in studies before. What is a Zedek? What is the definition of a Zedek? Is it someone that prays for a long time? He studies a lot of Torah, does a lot of mitzvot. Is that the Zedek? By the definition of a Torah, that's not really the Zedek. The Zedek is someone who feeds people. This is the definition of a Zedek. All right. There's two people called a Zedek. They fed mankind. Noach fed all the life that entered into the ark. He took care of the beasts and his family. He provided food for them. Also, Yosef. What did Yosef do? The 7-year famine. Yosef provided food for everyone. And there's actually a mention of another Zedek, but he's not a human. In Psalm 145, we read this 3 times a day. And we say, Zedek Hashem, B'cho Hashem. We say Hashem is a Zedek. In Psalm 145, it calls Hashem a Zedek. Why? Because Hashem feeds the whole entire world. And there is one more person called a Zedek, but not in the Torah, Rashi. Rashi calls Moshe a Zedek. And why is he calling him a Zedek? Because Moshe also fed the people. He fed manna to the children of Israel in the wilderness, which is interesting because even though the sages don't comment on this, it makes me think of one more Zedek. And who is that? Yeshua. Yeshua has to be a Zedek because Yeshua also fed the people, didn't he? And he provided loaves of fish and bread. But more than that, he provided life for all those that eat of him. And so, the Arizal says there is a concept of Gilgulin, which means that a person's neshama, or an aspect of it, comes back to this world for certain tikkun, to repair damage. The Gemara says, when you leave this world free of sin, the same way you came in is the same way you should go out. And this is hinting to Gilgulin. And the Arizal says, how do we rectify this? By learning halakha, Shulchan Aruch, Gemara, Musar, all of this. And what's interesting is in Bereshit 6:9, back to our parsha, it says, Ele todot Noach ish Zedek tamim. Someone who comes back as Gilgul the first time. Well, let me see here. The sages hint that Yeah, the Arizal says that Noach, it says Ele Toldot Noach Ish Zadik Tamim. It says Zadik Tamim means righteous and perfect. And the Arizal hints that Yosef was Zadik, he was the Zadik, and Tamim, Moshe. Moshe was the Tamim, perfect. Why did he have to come back twice? This is all hinting to Moshe Rabbeinu. And why did he have to come back twice? This is what it means, Ele Toldo, in his generations. Noach, it's referring to two others in his generations. Okay? The Rami Mipanu, the Kabbalist, he says one of Noach's sins was that he drank wine. He did a little kiddush and he had a little too much wine. He got drunk and he became revealed in his tent. And this was the tikkun from Yosef that Yosef had to do. How did Yosef do tikkun for Noach's drunken behavior? Anybody have any ideas? Well, when we read about Yosef, the only time we actually see him drink wine is when he saw his brothers. Until Yosef saw his brothers, that was the only time he had wine. And that's when the Pasuk says they drank with Yosef. I believe that's in Bereshit 43:34, if I'm not mistaken. And so they say that Yosef never drank before that because he was doing tikkun for Noach. Then in this Parsha Noach, it actually says that Noach had 3 sons. Okay, so the sages say, big deal. What's 3 sons got to do with anything? What's interesting is Yosef has the numerical value of 156. Yud is 10, Vav is 6, Samik is 60, and Pei is 80. 156. So what is the significance of 156? It's 6 times Yud K Vav K, the name of Hashem. 6 times 26 equals 156. What is 7 times 26? Equals 182, which is the numerical value of Yaakov. And 8 times 26 is 208, which is the numerical value of Yitzhak. Yosef is 6, Yaakov is 7, and Yitzhak is 8. And what is so significant about 156? Well, Ben, which is known as son, is 52. Noach had 3 sons. What's 52 times 3? 156. And so the sages say this is all alluding to a deeper concept that Yosef is the Gilgul of Noach. He had been Ben, 52 times 3, 156. Yosef was Noach. Now, why did they name him Noach? Why was Noach even called Noach to begin with? Why is his name Noach? And the sages say he invented the plow. Now, there's no way he built the plow when he was born. So what did they name him or call him before that? So what's interesting is the Abarbanel, he actually says their names, the people in those generations were named for what they would do, what they were known to do. And his father was scared to call him a name before he was born until he grew up, because there was a lot of klippas around and there wasn't many Zaddiks. So he was afraid that his son Noach would get too much attention, so he did not give him a name. This is what Yeah, Barbanel says, and at the end of Bereshis, at the end of Parsha Bereshis, it lists the generations of man. And so if you go to Genesis chapter 5, which is really interesting, for example, if you go to verse 13, it says, and Canaan lived 840 years after begetting Mahalalel. It says, Vayoled et Mahalalel, okay, in verse 13. And he begot Vayoled, he begot Mahalalel. And then again in verse 17, it says, or even verse 16, it says, and Mahalalel lived 830 years after begetting Yared. It says, Vayoled et Yared. All right. And going down even more to verse 19, it says, and begetting Enoch. Vayoled et Chanuk. Right. And again, if you go through all these words of begetting sons and daughters, I even Vayoled et Mesushalach. All right, it says Vayoled, it beget, and it tells the name. Why am I saying all this? When you come to verse 26, it says here, or actually verse 26. Vaychi Mesushalach Shava. It says a Methuselah lived 782 years after begetting Lamech, and he begot sons and daughters. It says, oh yeah, Vayoled et Lamech, and then you go down further to verse 28. Lamech lived 182 years, and what does it say? He begot a son. It says Vayoled ben. All of a sudden, through all of this lineage, all of these generations, we see everyone begetting, and the child is named. Lamech is Noach's father, and it doesn't say, and he begot Noach. It says Vayoled ben. Out of all of this, it's the only name that's hidden, right? No name for Noach. The Arizal says Noach did not have a name. He was called nothing. Arizal says another strange thing is his father actually wanted to called his name Ye Nachim, which is similar to Menachem. And it's an acronym. Ye Nachim is actually an acronym for Yosef, Noach, and Moshe. And what's interesting is, if you go back to the beginning of Parsha Noach, it says, Ele Toldot Noach. And Noach, so Yosef equals 156. And Moshe, the gematria for Moshe is 345. And when you add 156 to 345, it equals 501. And when it says Ele Toldot Noach, if you take the first letters of those four words, the Aleph, the Tav, the Nun, and the Nun, it equals 501, which is the numerical value of Yosef and Moshe. And so again, what was the sin of Noach? There's another allusion to the sin of Noach when we actually go to Isaiah chapter 54, verse 9. And it says here, Ki me Noach, Zot li asher nishbati me avor me Noach or haaretz Cain, Nishbati, Miksof, Alaich, Umig, Arbach. It says, for this is to me as Noach's waters. May Noach, just as I swore never again to pass Noach's waters over the earth, so I have sworn never again to be furious at you or shout at you. It says, may Noach. Why is Isaiah throwing Noach under the bus? So literally, it doesn't say the flood of Noah. It actually is talking as if this is the flood is partly because of Noach's fault. The Zohar says Noach was kind of responsible for the flood himself, bringing it on. And they say that he should have davened. He should have davened for the people in his generation. He should have reprimanded them. He should have taught them. He should have davened. You know, I'm seeing a lot of things on social media, even in this time, where posts are circulating, say, don't worry about the people that's right now. They're blind, leave them blind. Just, they're already gone. They won't listen. That's kind of the sin that Noach had. He didn't care. He's like, well, whatever, they're doomed, they're doomed. And when Hashem said, I'm going to wipe out mankind and create another new world, he should have said, no, keep mankind and continue. But what did Noach do? He didn't really fight for them. We even see that Hashem says this to Abraham later on. And Abraham, he pleads with Hashem, but we actually see the exact same scenario with Moshe in Exodus chapter 32, verse 32. This is what it says. Exodus 32. This is what it says. Ve'ata'im tisa chatatam ve'im ein. It says, and now if you would but forgive their sin. And then it says, but if not, erase me. Mechini na. Mechini na. Erase me from your book. Mechini na. Mechini is Menachem. In other words, Moshe is saying, I'm doing tikkun for Noach. Literally, the same letters of Noach. This is what Noach's father really named Noach. The reason Noach was held accountable, he didn't daven, he did not plead on their behalf, and so Moshe said, I will not make the same mistake. But me, blot me out. Why did Hashem have to save Noach? Because Noach, who would come from him. Moshe knew, or Hashem knew Moshe would come from Noach. Moshe says, if I can't rectify this, you should have wiped me out at the Mabul, at the flood. Where is the remnants of Moshe Rabbeinu? Beshagam. If it hadn't been for Moshe, this would have repeated itself. Mechani na, wipe me out. Rashi is bothered by one question. The box in the river. Why? She could have hid him some other way. Moshe's mother could have hid Moshe in a different way, but it was through the teva, the ark. And maybe when Hashem said to Noach, I'm going to save you, look at, if we go to Exodus 2:6 again, Exodus chapter 2, verse 6, it says, Vatif tach vetirehu es hayeled. She opened it and saw him, the boy, and it says vihine na'ar. A lot of explanations of that word na'ar, but boche vatachumo alav vatomer miyeled miyaldei Evrin Zeh. Zeh. It says, and behold, a youth was crying. She took pity on him and said, this is one of the Hebrew, or sorry, where was I? Yeah, she opened up, saw the boy, and yeah. Sorry. Yeah, this is one of the Hebrew boys. Now, if we go to actually chapter 7, is it? Did I write down the right verse? One second, might have wrote down the wrong verse here. 2, is it 2:7? Hazay, also chapter 7, verse 1. Sorry, guys. She took him and smeared him with clay. She saw that he was good. He tov, chapter 2, the woman conceived and gave birth to a son. She saw that he was good. He told who she was no longer able to hide him. Verse 7. Okay, I wrote down the wrong verse, but anyway, we see that she saw that he was good, and she opened it and saw him. Well, where am I thinking here? She saw that he was good. He who okay, anyways, she saw that he was good, and Tov is Tet 9 plus Vav is 6, which is 15, and Bet is 2 equals 17. She saw that he was good. This is what I'm actually trying to allude to. She saw that he was good, and the gematria for Tov is 17. So why did she make a big deal? Why does the Torah make a big deal of she saw that he was Tov and 17? You see, what the sages are really saying is Moshe's mother understood that Moshe was Noah. His mother understood this. Because 17, who came 17 generations after Noah? Moshe did. Moshe came 17 generations later. And so, I mean, from Noach to Abraham was generations, and from Abraham to Moshe is 7. So Moshe Rabbeinu, and we have here. And Yocheved was smart. She knew that he was 17 generations from Noach, so she put him in the ark, the Teveh, and this was the Tikkun. She said that he was Tov, he was born, and good equals 17. And so Rashi says on the ark, there was tar on the outside, but not in the inside. Yocheved knew he was the Zedek number 2. And this is why actually Rashi calls Moshe the Zedek. Rashi isn't just for the plain, just for nothing, calling Moshe a Zedek here in his commentary. But this is what Rashi is actually hinting to. This is what Rashi understands, that Moshe was a Zedek because he was the Gilgul of Noach. So Rashi calls Moshe the Tzaddik. And what else? Moshe later takes the bones of Yosef. Why? He's attached to Yosef, the generation of the flood. And this was also part of the Tikkun. And so Yosef equals 156. So does Eitz, the tree. And in this pasuk, in this parsha Noach, there's 153 verses, which is also the same numerical value as Betzalel, who equals 153. And Betzalel was a carpenter, and so was Noach. And so what's interesting is the tree equals 156, same with Yosef. This is alluding to Mashiach ben Yosef. 153 in exactly how many verses are in the Parsha Noach. It's interesting that Yeshua also told his disciples to bring out the fish out of the water, and it's actually exactly the Brit Hadashah mentions 153 fishes. And so this is a hint to the Tzaddik, the carpenter, and like the sages say, that Moshe suffered throughout his whole journey in building the ark and going inside the ark. And this is all alluded to Mashiach ben Yosef, which is interesting because in the beginning, before I recorded, I also shown how the wood is related to kaper, which means atone. And just like the carpenter built an ark by one righteous man who saved the world, whoever believed on Noach would not perish. And just like Mashiach ben Yosef, whoever believes on him shall not perish. Good night.